feel like every time the iPhone is checking my connection to the internet, which is pretty good around here because my husband works from home and everything, I'm always like doing this, anxiously awaiting for the live to start. Anyway, this is Elisha. I'm back with another live. Sorry I didn't do it yesterday. It ended up being one of those mom days that was totally hectic, and today's kind of crazy, and I'm leaving my phone. I'm not putting it on like do not disturb, or as I call it, nighttime mode, because it has a little moon and the girls say that that's nighttime mode, because I'm on call to doula a birth. So hire me for your doula needs. Not really. I mean, I really only do it for friends and with a midwife that I used and loved myself. But today I want to talk about children, actually. So me talking about doulaing a birth is kind of an okay segue into talking about reopening our schools. I have spoken before on the program about how important our girls are to us, how we kind of have conversations with them about things in our faith and in history and what's happening in the United States. They are all under the age of 11, so of course we have to kind of make things, not dumb them down, I don't like to use that term, but make things palpable or understandable for them at where they are at their stage of development. And I think that this ongoing stressor of whether or not schools are going to be reopening has really affected them, more so than the entire shutdown or leaving school on Friday, March 13th did. Our kindergartner at the time, she's going into first grade, you know, she was cool with it. She was fine with homeschooling. She liked the Zoom sessions. She was upbeat and chipper. They were even okay being at home for a while, which was nice and appreciated and amazing. But now I think that I thought summer would be easier, but because nothing is reopening and plans have consistently changed over and over again, they're really looking forward to school. They're really looking forward to going back and seeing their friends, or they were until Governor Newsom put our county, Los Angeles County, on one of the 19 lists of places where not even private schools could reopen. We are non-denominational. Our girls were raising in a non-denominational church when it is open and when we can go. We watch the services online for now, and they go to a Catholic school. There's many reasons why we chose a Catholic school. One of the reasons was the affordability of it. Another reason was the location. Further reason were actually some of the best high schools in LA County that are also affordable happen to be Catholic high schools. So we assumed that, and did some research, that if they went to a grade school in Catholic, then they would be kind of prepped and aware of the curriculum and the pattern and everything that would be required for them to get into a good Catholic high school and maybe even a good Catholic college. I mean, Notre Dame and LMU are good colleges, last I checked, despite growing leftism on Catholic college campuses. But all of that to say, I really expected schools to be able to reopen. I expected especially private schools to be able to open, and then beyond that, religious private schools to be able to reopen. Because all of these things are encompassed in the First Amendment, folks. And beyond that, even if you are concerned like I am, because I'm a decent parent, about my children's livelihood and health and well-being, thank God the data shows that children are not the most at risk here. And I know that people are saying, well, the original reason we pulled them out, and originally back in March, I was fully on board with this, was I didn't want them to go to school, contract something, and bring it home to my 63-year-old mother-in-law who happens to live with us. I get that. I didn't want them to go to school and then we go to Hawaii and visit my 90-year-old Gramps, and then something, heaven forbid, happened to him. There are conflicting studies on whether or not children are actually carriers at this point. But what we do know is that this uptick that we have seen in a place like California, where Gavin Newsom is now telling me my Catholic school cannot reopen in the county of Los Angeles because we're on some watch list, is not scientifically based. In Los Angeles County, last I checked, there have been 0 deaths, thank God, 0 deaths amongst anyone under the age of 18 years old. So, due to COVID, my children are more likely to go to Ralph's with me tomorrow, heaven forbid, and get injured or die in a car accident because I misplace a car seat or don't buckle them properly, or some jerk is driving 45 miles an hour in the center lane down Ventura, which I've seen before, than they are to go to school and contract and die of COVID. And yet, we are keeping our children home, which the American Pediatric Society itself has said is potentially a greater risk to a lot of kids in this country, more so than the risk of them getting COVID. Children use our schools, not just our private schools, but especially our public schools, Parents unfortunately have to, or in circumstances of needing it for childcare, especially if you're a single parent in the United States or in an area like Los Angeles where you have to work and you use it. Some children, school is the safest spot for them. I've talked to many a public school teacher about this that are severely worried about the kids that they know live in multi-generational homes that don't have a private place to go do their homework, that don't have high-speed internet, that don't have a laptop or an iPhone or a computer to use. There is now, Governor Newsom is saying, well, there might be a waiver that we can use for elementary schools because those kids are old enough to stay at home and do it alone. I think every single elementary school should be doing this waiver. And I know that people are saying, hey, homeschool, but homeschool isn't for everybody. I was homeschooled all 12 years, might end up homeschooling our girls this fall. I'm a big fan of homeschooling, but overall I'm a big fan of school choice because I understand that much like individuals like you and me, we're not a one-size-fits-all. Our nation is not a one-size-fits-all. All of our children are not one-size-fits-all, right? So to say, well, the answer is homeschooling isn't going to be true for everyone. And as I've stated to Bethany Mandel and other amazing homeschool moms I know, I think it's more challenging for a parent to enter into homeschooling at this stage of shutdown than it was in the normal world that we used to live in, right? I mean, in an open world, you can go on field trips, you can go to the beach for science classes, you can go to the children's museums and the parks and play dates and co-ops and all of these things that aren't an option to us right now. So I think that brings in a different element of homeschooling. And then there's a lot of people that just are not able to homeschool their children. And I get that. Like, there might be a clash, there might be special needs, there might be so many things that are necessary. And I just consistently go back to how bothered I am that the data and the science is not being used right now. And I think that Newsom, my conspiratorial side is like, I think that he looked at LA County and he was getting pressure from teachers unions across the state and was afraid to reopen schools in major counties that had an uptick in cases, Los Angeles being one of them. And you have a lot of teachers that are being very public on social media and in media interviews with the LA Times and everybody else about how they are at risk and they don't want to go back to work because they're afraid of contracting COVID and dying. And he had the pressure from the public sector unions that were saying this one thing, and from not really listening to the concerns of the parents that need the schools to reopen, and was like, as a mea culpa, I'm going to do this thing where I'm also going to shut down private schools so you guys don't have to worry about losing your funding. I think that that's what this boils down to. We saw this in the open letter that the LAUSD Teachers Union said, where they wanted to have funding removed from charter schools that are a part of the public school system, by the way, here in Los Angeles. They are LAUSD charter schools, okay? And why? What's the purpose of that? How does it help children? We've talked about this before. It is mind-boggling to me that you have teachers that are essential workers. Schools are essential. Especially public schools in the nation are so essential for our children, for their educational well-being, sometimes for their physical well-being, their nutritional, their emotional, their social, their developmental. There's so much that is important that happens and is impacted in schools in our nation, and you have people saying, no, it's fine, parents can do okay. They really can't. And for how long are we going to expect this to go on? And how come there is zero transparency for these decisions that these lawmakers are making, and oftentimes lawmakers on the left side of the aisle? I've heard of schools or areas, specifically Catholic schools where the archdiocese are trying to find waivers. I've heard of different elementary schools that are saying, hey, we're going to reopen. Of course, Grace to You is a church that just reopened and said, hey, we expect people to be independently responsible and do their own thing. I understand and respect that. I also understand and respect churches that choose not to. But the bottom line is, it should be my child and my choice, which is something I talk about on campuses a lot too. It's so interesting to me how the left is, well, it's the mother's decision, it's the woman's decision to decide. And yet in education in our country, even pre-COVID, they don't let a parent decide. They don't let the mom decide. They don't even ask the kid what the kid wants. Your education is dictated solely by what you can afford or the zip code that you were born into, because you have radical, civil unions or taxpayer-funded unions that are preventing kids from doing what they need to do and having the absolute best opportunity that they can have for their educational future. And I think that we need to seriously, parents everywhere need to look into what options you can have and be banging down the doorsteps. Don't riot Seattle and Portland style, which is another conversation for another day. But you need to be like banging on the doors and ringing the phones off the hook and emailing and tweeting and whatever. Use every voice that you have possible to gear up parents and to fight for our ability to educate our children in the way that we see fit and to educate our children in the way that we see best. And California is one of those states that's super restrictive on homeschoolers. I posted to my Instagram story the other day how annoyed I was that even in California, it says that the state of California does not quote unquote authorize parents to homeschool their children. And I was like, oh, does the state of California also not authorize me to, go to church on Sunday? Like, screw you, state of California. I'm sorry, and I want to stay here and fight, but you guys are making it more and more difficult for people to be able to stay and live and succeed here when you're not opening public schools, you're not opening private schools, you're not allowing businesses to reopen, you're keeping churches shut down. The list goes on and on. I mean, even today, the city of Pasadena was like, oh, people were playing disc golf and, we don't want them to irresponsibly play disc golf. Why? If people want to go play disc golf at a public park that they paid for with their taxpayer dollars and take the risk of doing that in the open air where they're getting vitamin D and exercise that has been proven to help people prevent and not contract COVID, why is that a problem? Why does Pasadena literally have to be shutting down everything type Karen and is like, nope, no fun allowed here? I mean, a friend of mine said on Twitter, she was like, hardest hit everywhere, youth pastors, because where are they going to do their disc golf tournament? Anyway, I feel like I'm rambling. I was up a lot last night and yesterday was a long day. But all of this to say, the science does not show the reasoning. There is no reasoning behind why we're keeping our schools closed. It is entirely leftist fear tactics. And I think really the selfishness and irresponsibility of public sector unions that do not care about your children, that do not care about my children. And now you have dictator Gavin Newsom who's saying, well, to appease everybody, we're also going to make sure that private schools are closed. There's nothing that shows that this uptick that happened. The schools were closed. It was fine. And we're seeing increasing data that, thank God, children are going to be okay. Like, children are not the most at risk. If you have a teacher that doesn't want to come back to work, fine, figure it out. Early retirement, they can be the ones that are doing distance learning. If you have parents that don't want to return, fine. But you know what I'm hearing from private schools all around the country? They have waiting lists of parents that are desperate for places for their kids to go to get the education that they need. And you have leaders like Gavin Newsom preventing parents from doing the best thing for their kids. So that's my mom rant for today. I think we need to reopen schools. You guys let me know on Instagram what you think. Let me know on YouTube what you think. I try to respond to all of the comments, and thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. See you guys later.